want to welcome you both to this Coming Home conversation, where today I'll be interviewing Elmarie Smith with you, Michele, Muller, as the studio audience. It really delights me to have you here in this conversation, and I particularly want to thank you, Elmarie, for agreeing to be interviewed, and Michele for agreeing to participate as well. Thank you. It's probably quite a strange and different sort of thing to anything you might be used to. Most of the Zoom conversations are usually for business purposes or meeting with family and that kind of thing. But to have a conversation amongst women who largely never met before together is more of a rare occurrence. I'd always like to talk a little bit about the geography of the conversation. So today's conversation, for example, the three of us happen to be in South Africa, which is very, very beautiful and very apt, and I trust just as it's meant to be. And this adds a different type of intimacy to the conversation because we're in a more concentrated area, and that lends a particular focus to where our conversation might go. In terms of what is topical at the moment, as I was thinking about it today, we're sitting in a position where I was hearing about the local government elections on the radio this morning. So we're right on the heels of having local government elections at a time where things are particularly difficult. Of course, they're difficult all over the world. They're huge challenges all over the world. But since our conversation is centered here today, we'll emphasize that a bit more. Given also that there'll be women from abroad who'll listen to this conversation, and that we're going into local government elections at a time where the country is at a very difficult precipice, where we have no idea the way things are going to go or turn out. We've had huge looting, unrest, disruptions in the country this year, and also it's with many municipalities across the country collapsing, not being able to provide many of the very basic amenities that are required just simply to survive, such as water and basic infrastructure, such as housing and roading, schooling, all that kind of thing. It really feels like super significant times that we're now having this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead then and read our poem, Homecoming. After a long time unmoored, living alongside rather than in yourself, on seeing this and feeling suddenly homesick for something you didn't know existed. Peace. You might long to rush at yourself, dive headlong into the safety of home, and wonder why you keep missing. Wonder why you and your life keep floating away from each other, knowing that the anchor was thrown too far from the boat all that time ago. Reunion can't come soon enough. Still, it takes time to trust the tide. It takes time to reacquaint and trust the tide that was always trying to take you home and will pick you up and return you yet. I'm going to go ahead then and Michele, just introduce you by saying that you and I have only recently met, and by that I mean sometime this year. I would like to just invite you to introduce yourself just by way of a couple of short questions, where you're from, and also something about yourself that might interest us to know. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Guiomar. So, yes, I mean, I've been living in Pretoria and Centurion for about nearly more than 20 years, 25 years. I grew up in Cape Town. So, yeah, when you talk about home, I guess I always tend to think Cape Town is home, but I've been here a lot longer than I was there. Okay, a little bit about myself. In terms of my career, I work as a consultant in waste and water management. But then I have quite a few other interests, which I teach transcendental meditation, and I do aromatherapy. I do consultations, and that's my passion, actually. It's possibly because my background is chemistry, and I think it kind of fits in with that. And yeah, I'm not sure what else would be of interest, or what else should I share?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's of great interest. I didn't know any of that about you. And Pretoria, for those who might listen later, is a city not far from Johannesburg. It's about half an hour's drive. And it is one of the capital cities. We have three capital cities in South Africa, and Pretoria is one of the capital cities. So welcome. It's the first time we've got someone from Pretoria joining these conversations. Thank you, Michele. And so I'll go ahead then and introduce you, Elmarie. We've known each other for probably just over a year now. To me, you're a woman, a really inspiring woman, and well-centered, a woman who's strongly guided, I feel, by her intuition and by her heart. So I'd like to welcome you to the conversation on that basis. One of the things that you've said when we've spoken before is that for you, home is where the heart is. You know, that is really, I think, the springboard from which our conversation can start today. You've also said that home is not a structure, but it's more about how we connect and how we connect with people in different circumstances. Would you like to share a little bit around that notion for you, what that means to you?
To me, just to the first point that you've made, home is really where the heart is for me. That's really my happy space. And it's not necessarily the roof over my head, but it's really places that I go to, people that I meet, whatever is special and dear to me, and that are all close to me symbolizes home. And I think it's probably the way one gets raised, or how you nurtured in life, in those formative years, that sort of, I don't know, in my case specifically, gave me that type of grounding or view of home. It's also where we meet people, not only people that we know, like dear friends, family, that you invite into your heart or into your house, referring to the structure again, but it's also where we meet complete strangers. Michele, and very nice to meet you. It's the first time that the two of us meet. And Guiomar, thank you for spending time with us this afternoon. It's always great to have a conversation with you. So for me, it's also to invite people that you don't know into your heart, and to get a little peek of who you are, what you're all about. I think lockdown, to a certain extent, have taught us a lot of lessons around that, with the Zoom meetings that you referred to earlier on. That we felt that was our way of communicating, especially in those initial stages of the hard lockdown, with people, work colleagues, customers. You know, I'm specifically just referring to my own circumstances, but and I think through those conversations and through the calls, people got to also get a little bit of a sneak preview of what is happening in your house, which is very unusual because that wouldn't happen under normal circumstances. I think we tend to keep our home life, or home, or our hearts private, and we don't always open up to everyone around us, and I think that's a lesson that I certainly learned. Even lecturing at the university became so interesting, with inviting 75 odd students into your house on a regular basis, where you maybe have your camera on, and people can see what's happening in and around your space, your happy space, and you can't necessarily see the same in their case. But be it as it may, I think for me it's really about that safe haven, the place where we can feel safe, where we can connect with other people. And then also something that you mentioned, Guiomar, about that wholeness, where the mind, the body, and soul all come together. in one place.
I love the notion that you bring in of these meetings that we now have so many more of online. We often hear of them spoken about in more negative contexts and what have you, and there are certainly elements that we can't tap into. But I loved the way you brought in how, in some ways, it is inviting people into our home. And so there is that element of that as well. And I love that notion that you introduced, even of your students coming into your home.
Because under normal circumstances, that would hardly ever happen. You as the lecturer go out to the varsity and go and lecture there. So chances of students ever getting an opportunity to spend time with you virtually while you're at home, that's rather awkward. I must say the first couple of lectures were quite strange, but it's certainly something that I learned to get used to, and that you get more comfortable with as you go along.
Elmarie, one of the things that we've spoken about was, and I've spent a little bit of time reflecting on, was how you said, interesting that Michele is from Cape Town originally, but that for you, Cape Town feels like home. I was wondering, there's just in the times that we're living now, I know you're speaking of perhaps yourself and your husband going to live in Cape Town, where you said that you've had some of your most wonderful experiences and memories, and perhaps that's why you're drawn there. And you also spoke of how in a way, your ancestry is from there. I love that in many ways you're a fully South African woman. I know you grew up and have lived in Johannesburg most of your life. You really are a South African woman with your roots going back to about the 1700s and early 1800s here in South Africa, and being of French Huguenot and British settler descent, of both of those descents.
Guiomar, I certainly believe that that's probably the case, because there must be a reason why the place is so dear to my heart, and why I love it so much. Michele, I really had a smile. There was a smile that came to my face when you mentioned that you're from the Cape Town, Western Cape area as well. It's certainly a beautiful place, and I feel so completely at peace. Maybe it's the different pace, a different rhythm that we experience when we go to the Western Cape as opposed to what we are exposed to when we, in terms of our everyday lives in Joburg. Joburg brings a different energy. And I think that peace and, just a more relaxed, little bit more laid back type lifestyle is certainly what the Western Cape offers. And for me, the beauty of the Western Cape, especially the Winelands district, is just something completely extraordinary. I think one will travel far and wide to come across a more beautiful place on earth. And to a certain extent, I feel privileged that I've had the opportunity to grow up and not in the area, but to have the opportunity to go back to the roots where my ancestors came from, or where they started their journey in South Africa. Having spent quite a lot of time in the Western Cape. So yeah, it's a very special place to me.
Thank you. I mean, I can vouch for that it's extraordinary. I haven't spent nearly as much time as you have there. Obviously, I visited, and it really is extraordinary, drawing people from all over the world for its beauty. So it's very apt that you also, that's where your origins are. Elmarie, another element that we touched on and that really resonated with me, or I felt was quite profound, was how important it is for you, how much it seems to mean to you, the situation of women, one could say in Africa, but also specifically in South Africa. I know you've said in the past that you have a fair number of interactions with women through your work, other than lecturing, your full-time job, and how touched you often are by the the lengths they have to go to just to show up at work, to make ends meet, to survive. And those are women that have jobs. But I know that your heart is touched even more deeply by what goes on in this country. And there's a part of me that wonders whether, when you talk about home, I thought perhaps some of the reason that you are perhaps yearning for this going back to your roots, and I say this, I'm finding I'm yearning to know, to touch more with my roots in Spain at the moment, hasn't got to do with this wounding or pain around people who don't have homes, who don't have even a roof over their heads.
Guiomar, yes, that's definitely the case. And I do think women play such a strong role in society in general, especially if you look at, a lot of the older women raising their children's children to give them opportunity to go and find employment and to offer some form of shelter or place also to ground their children and their grandchildren. We've seen it through the lady that worked for us for about 14 years. Her greatest calling was to, at the end of last year when she retired, to go home, literally home, for her being in Kwakwa in the Free State. Where she went to go and look after children's children and to raise the grandchildren. She said to me as well that it's a lot about teaching them some of the life lessons that she had to learn in the process. And not only for Gladys, that and what I've experienced through my interactions with her, but there's a number of South African women on a daily basis that live along the same lines, providing for their families, being the absolute pillar of strength for their families, being the home or the grounding for the young children. I really have a lot of respect for the fact that a lot of the older women, especially, that they have so little for themselves from, means point of view and money point of view, have so much to give in terms of the younger generation and what they're willing to part with in terms of teaching younger children some life lessons and skills. And it's so amazing that most of the women, no matter who you speak to in the African community specifically, always want better for the young children that they're raising, be it their own children or their children's children. That gives me a lot of hope to see that happening and to get people that are willing to sacrifice so much and to really share out of the little that they maybe have, with the loved ones around them. So that to me is very special, and it gives me so much hope to say, you know what, the future for South Africa and for women in particular can only be a bright one, with what I've seen and what I've experienced through that specific aspect.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's interesting. Michele had mentioned that she's a TM teacher, and I know Maharishi, who was the founder of the TM movement, his last words, or some of his last words, that the future is bright, and those are the same words that you have just used. I think as long as we have that guiding light, and the guiding light, as you say, of the mothers and the ones who've gone before, the grandmothers.
Guiomar, I think to a certain extent that has also been influenced by the fact that my mother has fulfilled a very similar role in my life. Somebody that has really taught me a lot about life. Unfortunately, didn't live a long life herself, but in the years that she were with us, she had so many valuable life experiences, and I think that I see that same tendency happening in so many other women in South Africa's lives, and for that I really salute the mothers and the elder women, the elders, so to speak, in society that are willing to share and to teach these life lessons to the younger generation.
I'm sure your words, are greatly appreciated also by Black African women, who might also listen to this conversation, who being a white South African, realize your appreciation of that and your resonance with that value of the passing down of learnings, teachings, the most important teachings. And you also have made mention in the past around how you've traveled relatively extensively into countries in Africa, and just the delight that it's brought you to see people with the bare minimum in terms of material possessions or belongings or even home structures, living such joyful lives. Perhaps you could share a little bit around that, which countries you've been and what your experience of that has been.
I think, Guiomar, we're very fortunate in that I would say the average South African woman has got a roof over her head of some sort. And traveling in Africa into the rural parts of Botswana, Mozambique, in the north of Mozambique, to places like Nakala, Nampula, where you literally encounter villages, the one after the other, have made me realize that, you know what, we can, with very little in life, still be happy as well. And I think what I've seen is, families, women, their husbands, little children along the way. And it's always such a colorful experience, especially the trip from Nampula up all the way to Nakala. It's about a 250 kilometer stretch, but takes about 3.5 hours to travel that piece of road. But just to see happy people, happy faces, people that are smiling. Again, going back to the start of our conversation, I do think that home for a lot of people in Africa is really where the heart is, because it's not mansions, not large homes, not security estates. People are really living in rural villages. I've seen the same in Botswana. I've seen it in the DRC, where I've traveled to Lubumbashi, Kinshasa. Okay, Kinshasa is a far more upbeat, modern city, so to speak, but definitely in the more rural parts, like in Lubumbashi and the areas around the lake districts and so on, there's really a lot of happy people that have very little at their disposal. And that takes me back to another aspect that we've touched on, saying that, you know what, home and is that place where mind, body, and soul come together. That really, wherever you find your happy space, if it's in your head, if it's in your heart, if it's in your soul, I guess that will put a smile on your face ultimately.
And another thing that you brought in was around the balance, and finding the balance of that. And maybe it is about balancing those three aspects and having them all. You used the words before of in balance and harmony, finding peace through having those aspects of ourselves in balance and harmony.
I think to be able to experience that balance, you need to have some other power outlet or that you can plug into to be able to bring that harmony. And to me, that's the place where we go to at the end of every day, where you can sort of shut out the rest of the world and whatever good or bad experience you've had during the day, and just be yourself, and nurture your body through cooking a nice meal or having something to drink, looking after yourself, listening to nice music, just to unwind, to relax, and to bring that balance back again. I think we sometimes get so busy with everyday life and get so absorbed in it that it's sometimes difficult to just stand back a little bit and to sort of breathe a little bit deeper and to get that harmony and peace flowing again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you work particularly hard, that you're feeling as though we're getting to a point now after almost 18 months of being under what you could call some intense hardship with the COVID, since the start of the COVID situation, of really coming into a place now where it's time to reality check and really stop and kind of stop the bus and look at what's going on, what's really going on. Maybe some of those parts of the heart that still need healing, that still need attention. I've referred to them, I call them the rooms of the mansion, that we all have this mansion inside with so many rooms, and that are we making sure we're taking care of all those rooms in the mansion. And it seems to me from what you're saying, with this beautiful heart that you have, that there are some places right now that need more time, that need more peace and quiet, and a time and place to be able to heal some of those wounds, which might have something to do with those things that are neglected often for women, that you feel so much for. And so I just want to thank you where we are right now, as I'd like to invite Michele to come back in, but to thank you for bringing in this theme of home being where the heart is. Michele, yes, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd like to invite you to participate in a conversation with Elmarie, with ourselves, and perhaps by way of, what thoughts are coming to mind to you as you're hearing Elmarie speak, what's coming up for you personally, anything you'd like to share or ask her?
No, I mean, I really enjoyed listening to what she had to say. You can see, Elmarie, you're obviously a very deeply caring person, and you've got a lot of life experience with women, and obviously dealing with women. I can tell you care very much for obviously for the people that you deal with, and it was very interesting the way you said, and that you're bringing the students into your home. I kind of thought that was quite interesting, because it also made me think meetings that I have now with clients, people you would never know anything about them personally. I was just thinking there was a meeting I had yesterday with some people in London, and the one lady, it was obviously in her room, and she had a guitar and everything, and you just suddenly feel something different about someone you would never ever know, on that level. So that was very interesting for me, that point that you made.
I also gave it some more thought, earlier in the day, and then that was also something that jumped to mind for me is, thinking of people that I've met over the last short while, and being invited to their homes. It really gives you a different angle on who the person is. And I think we can put our little masks on, to the rest of the world on a day-to-day basis at work or wherever you go. But that's really saying so much about us, is when you walk through that front door and you get to meet the person in their house, in their special place. Yeah, I must say it's a great experience, and like you say, Guiomar and Michele, where you really get to know people as in their own personal space.
It deepens that level of intimacy, one could say, really. And with having been denied this for quite an extended period now, that's something we maybe need to do more of, is invite people we know into our space. I think we're going to start winding up now. And Michele, is there anything you'd like to share with Elmarie around your experience of her, what home is to her, where home is to her? Also, it's in line with the fact that you both you come from Cape Town. Elmarie is looking to go to Cape Town.
I really enjoyed everything she had to say. It really, it resonated with me, let's put it that way. And it was really nice to hear someone who has the same love, I think, for the Cape that I have, because I can completely share those feelings, and I know exactly, what you're saying when you talk about the beauty there and how you enjoy it there. Because that for me that's always will be my home, no matter how long I'm up here for. I always feel that's where I want to, kind of ultimately go back to. So, yeah.
So thank you, Michele, for sharing that. I just love, the connection that there is there. And Elmarie, also to thank you for joining this conversation today. And the words that I want to close with, for some reason that came up for me, are from the title book of famous South African author, Alan Paton, who had the book called Cry the Beloved Country. Those are the words as reflecting on you and where we are at this moment, at this juncture, that come up, just and in terms of the beautiful heart that you bring to this, to spaces. And if there anything you want to share in closing?
I think we've captured most of it through what you've said. I think the one last point that made me realize again how important it is that we do take stock and have a look at those rooms of the heart that makes up the heart and makes the heart whole. Yeah, I think it is definitely, I don't know whether it's that time of the year, the start of a new season, or as we approaching the end of the year, but I do think it's, for me specifically, time to go and have a look in some of those rooms and see which of those need some cleansing. So yeah.
I know you've used the word cleansing before, and also, and perhaps it's attention. I know this week has been a big week for me around almost compartmentalizing those rooms and looking and saying, okay, which ones are out of kilter, which are not getting sufficient attention for me to be happier, in myself, in my life, in the way I'm living. So maybe it's both cleansing and attention that are needed. Makeda is a word that means Queen of Africa. Also means Queen of Sheba in a biblical sense. The queen from some mythical country in Africa, very aptly, who visited King Solomon. She was the only woman with a queendom in that